Buddhism's Guide to Seeing Your Blind Spots. If you practice meditation long enough, you're going to run into plateaus. There are times, especially in the beginning, when it feels like you're climbing a mountain. Sometimes it's quite steep. You can see the progress you're making, and it's very encouraging. But then, there come the times when you meditate and meditate and meditate, and it all seems to be the same. You wonder, when is the next mountain going to come? You don't know. It's as if you're in a fog. You don't even know if there's going to be another mountain or if you're on top of a butte and you've already reached the top. What are you going to do? You don't want to go down. The answer is to explore what you've got. You've got to be more sensitive to what's going on. Look for the little things. On the way up, you were looking for the large markers, the obvious things. That's what got you up. When you get to the plateau, you can look very carefully at the soil. There's a highway in Arizona that goes down from Jacob Lake to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. It's a very pretty highway. They advertise it as one of the prettiest rides in America. You go through forests, you go through expansive meadows. I've been over it many times. One time, they were working on the road, and the person who flagged us down said we had to wait for another 15 to 20 minutes before he could let us through. So I decided to get out of the car and walk across the meadows. That's when I realized that there were tiny, tiny flowers all over the meadow. Driving past in the car, you didn't see them. All you saw was just grass. But if you'd stopped and paid attention, you could see more. In the same way, there's a lot to see here in your body and mind. After all, what's happening right now to shape your experience? There's bodily fabrication, the way you breathe, verbal fabrication, the way you talk to yourself, and mental fabrication, the images you hold in mind, the perceptions, and then the feelings you focus on. You're engaging in these activities all the time, but how conscious are you of what you're doing? And what are the details? What, for instance, are the perceptions you're holding in mind? Often you don't know because these things can be buried under many layers. You're not going to get down to them until you strip the layers away. And that's not going to happen by looking around to see where the next slope is going to be. You have to focus on what you've got, where you're standing, what you're doing. After all, where did the Buddha gain awakening? He gained awakening watching his own breath. What's the difference between his breath and your breath? Nothing. It's just that he looked a lot more carefully. He asked the right questions. How am I putting this together? What are my intentions right now? What views are they based on? So when you hit a plateau, take that as an opportunity to say, I've got to look more carefully. Go back over the territory you've been on. Back and forth, back and forth. John Lee makes a lot of this image. This path we're walking on is like a walking meditation path. You go back and forth, back and forth. It's the same path, but sometimes you'll notice a little something that you didn't notice before. It was there all along, but you didn't notice it because you weren't looking carefully enough, or you were looking someplace else. When you hit a plateau, everything you need to know for awakening is right here. The question often comes up, where is the best place to meditate? And the answer, of course, is right here where you are. Just look very carefully. The Buddha gives you maps of what's going on in the mind. When he describes dependent co-arising, he isn't just showing off his knowledge. He means for his description of the different links to be useful. Now, what you see as you look at your mind is going to vary from person to person. Which link is the most meaningful for you? Read through the different links and ask yourself, do I know what this is in my mind right now? Do I know what that is in my mind right now? Where are the blanks? You don't want to just color in the blanks with your crayons. You want to look carefully. What is there in the blank? These thoughts going through the mind are quicker than the subliminal messages on TV, so you've got to slow things down inside in terms of what you're going to be looking at. You look at one thing continually and try to be alert. I've mentioned this before. An image that a lot of the forest Ajahns like to use is that of being a hunter. I've never been a hunter, but hunting is a skill. It requires that you be alert and still at the same time. If you move around, you chase away the game. If you stay still but fall asleep, the rabbits can be right under your nose and you're not going to know. So ask yourself, are you still enough? Are you alert enough? And ask different questions. For me, one of the most revelatory Dhamma books I ever read was the one where Ajahn Mahabua was giving talks to a woman who was dying of cancer. He talks about his own practice, dealing with pain. He starts talking about the different questions he asked about the pain and the things he observed in his mind. They were questions that I had never thought of asking. I found that when I started asking them, it opened things up inside. Now, his questions may not open things up for you, but you've got to ask yourself, what are the assumptions I'm making right now? The things I'm sloughing over, gliding over, running past, so that I don't see the little flowers. All I see is a field of grass. How can I question those assumptions? That's a lot of the work of discernment right there. It's not so much finding the answers, but knowing the right questions to ask. It was a while after reading Ajahn Mahabua that I came across the Buddha's instructions on breath meditation. I discovered that the Buddha gives, in a very cursory form, precisely the approach that Ajahn Mahabua was recommending. You get in touch with what kind of feelings you have in the body, and then you ask yourself, what are the perceptions around this? The perceptions and feelings. Those are the mental fabrications. And to what extent are the perceptions the problem? How can I calm those perceptions? In other words, how can I find a perception that's just as true, but has a more calming effect on the mind? Like the perception that the pain is coming at you. How about thinking of it going away? In other words, it arises, but as soon as it arises, see that it's running away from you. After all, time passes. Everything that arises runs away. They say that space-time moves at the speed of light. So think of that. What does that do for the mind? When you see that it has an effect on the mind, what other perceptions can you change? As you dig around in this area, you're going to run into some assumptions that you didn't expect, which is why the really good insights are unexpected. You can't guarantee an insight meditation technique. When they tell you you're going to see this, well, of course you're going to make yourself see this. But the really important insights are the unexpected ones. You see those only by slowing down, asking new questions, and looking more carefully. Right there on the ground in the plateau may be precisely what you're needing. So look carefully, slow down, look for the details, because those are the things that are going to open things up. When you catch yourself doing things that you didn't notice before, remember that the Buddha's image for insight is a mirror. When I was in France, the question came, how does meditation help you see the nature of reality? I had to respond, the Buddha's not asking you to see the nature of reality. He's asking you to see what you're doing that's causing suffering. To see that, you have to reflect carefully on what you're doing. It's happening all the time. But we're sloughing over the details, and so we don't see. When things aren't going well. Some of the discourses give an impression that the practice is a smooth upward incline, one sure-footed step after another, going progressively up and up and up a staircase. Fortunately, the canon contains other passages confirming that it's not always a steady progress. There are ups and downs. Some of the passages, especially in the Therigatha and Therigatha, portray monks and nuns complaining that the practice would go well for a while and then crash, go well for a while then crash. One monk commenting that this had happened so often that he was ready to commit suicide, it had gotten so bad. Those passages are good reminders that, no matter how bad things get, it's still possible to gain awakening. In each of these cases, where the monks and the nuns had run amok from their dwellings, crazed over the ups and downs of their practice, they finally pulled themselves together and were able to attain total release. This is why it's good to look to these stories for encouragement. Back in the 19th century, people liked to read the lives of great men and women. It was considered an essential part of a good education to study their examples, how they'd been through many, many hardships and yet hadn't lost heart, how they'd finally come out on top. With modern literature, the taste has changed to anti-heroes, people you may sympathize with, but who you wouldn't want to take as examples. It's a shame that we've lost a taste for genuine heroes and heroines in our literature. Occasionally you find it, though, as in the accounts of the most recent political campaigns. Even the most well-oiled campaign machine would have its ups and downs, but what mattered was how the people in charge managed those ups and downs. One of the important lessons you can learn from these accounts is that when things get bad, it's not the end of the world. You just stop, take stock of the situation, and figure a way out. Or you can read about expeditions like Shackleton's down to Antarctica. Things got really bad even before they could get to Antarctica. Their ship got locked at sea in the winter ice, so they had to leave the ship and walk across the ice, dragging their dinghies behind them. When they reached the edge of the ice, they set out across the ocean. Most of them thought they were doomed. But even when they thought they were doomed, they kept going because of one thing: their sense of discipline, realizing that as long as you stay disciplined, you can take advantage of whatever opportunities do arise. That's the first lesson to take from these stories: a strong sense of discipline. As you dig down into this lesson, it reminds you that you need to get back to basics so that the consistency of your discipline has a firm foundation. In our practice, getting back to basics means reminding yourself of why you're here, you're suffering, and this is the way out. What is that way out? As the Buddha says, right view comes first. In his analysis of dependent co-arising, the prime factor causing suffering is ignorance. You don't see things in terms of the Four Noble Truths, and your attention goes wandering off to all sorts of other places. Or, if you do have little bits and pieces of knowledge, that's all it is. Little bits and pieces. Nothing continuous. You need to develop mindfulness and alertness so that your knowledge becomes more continuous and the bits and pieces connect up. So consistency and the focus on how to end suffering are two basic principles to bring to your awareness. You're here to gain knowledge by looking at things consistently in terms of the Four Noble Truths. Get started with the right questions. Where is there stress right now? What are you doing to cause it? What actions help to alleviate it? Then bring more consistent attention to those questions and to how they apply to what you're experiencing right now. If it strings you out to focus on the stress, then focus on the question, where are the good things right now? What can you rely on as your path? If there's a little bit of mindfulness, hold on to it. Right speech, right action, all the rights of the noble path. Hold on to what you've got, realizing that the situation inside and out may not be what you like, but your way out of here is to hold on to whatever you still have of the path, these states of mind. Even if all you've got is just that simple ability to stay attentive, then stay attentive and keep that attention appropriate without getting entangled in the storylines, the narratives, and all the other crazy ideas that the mind keeps churning out for itself. So, when things don't look good, try to get some perspective by reminding yourself, what are the basics? Why are you here? What is this all about? It's about developing some skills and learning how to comprehend your stress and suffering, learning how to abandon the cause when you can see it, learning how to develop the good factors of the path, and whatever other qualities of mind reinforce the path when they arise. Endurance is important. It's the quality that gives the consistency to the path. Simply following the path 1 hour a night is not going to do the trick. On again, off again. That doesn't help at all. It may help a little, but it doesn't build up the momentum you need. Momentum comes with sticking with things over time. It's like planting a tree. If you plant the tree and water it only occasionally, or water it just once and forget about it, the tree is not going to survive. You have to be consistent in looking after it, committed to looking after it. That's how it grows. Take a lesson from your breathing. The body breathes continually. If it breathed just while you were focusing on it and then stopped breathing when you were thinking about something else, you'd be dead. So take some lessons from the breath because it's consistent. It keeps coming in and going out whether you pay attention to it or not, whether you like it or not. It's there. It keeps coming in and going out, keeping you alive. Take that as a lesson for the mind. You've got to be consistent. Even though the path is not yielding the quick and exciting results you'd like to see, remember that nobody promised it was going to be quick and easy, that it was going to be exciting all along the way. When the practice has its ups, you have to be heedful. When it gets down, you have to be heedful. You can't be complacent either way. In other words, when things are going really well, you can't take your hands off the steering wheel, assuming that the car is going to drive itself. You can't let yourself get complacent or careless. Keep being attentive very, very consistently, moment by moment by moment, to what's happening. If things are going well, do what you can to keep them going well. When things are not going well, again, you can't be heedless. You can't let negativity take over your mind. It'll have lots of things to complain about. This is not the right place to practice. These are not good people to practice with. On and on and on, diverting your attention from the real problem, which is that you're not paying careful attention to what the mind is doing. The mind is a very clever politician. It can very quickly distract you from what's really going on. This is why the Buddha said to obtain completion through heedfulness, through being very careful, uncomplacent. That's the discipline that will see you through. That expedition that Shackleton ran, I once got into a disagreement with someone who said that Shackleton made all sorts of wrong decisions, so his followers shouldn't have listened to him. But if they hadn't listened to him, the whole thing would have fallen apart. People would have died. He got people through and inspired them to get themselves through, even though he did make mistakes. A sense of discipline is what can correct for those mistakes to make sure that they're not disastrous. So always remember, whenever there's a problem, that more attention is required. In particular, you have to pay more careful attention to what's happening in terms of the issue of stress and its causes. Everything you need to know for awakening is right here. All the factors are right here, simply that at the moment they're out of control. They're causing suffering. When you learn how to bring them under control, then this process of fabrication, for example, can turn into the path. Many of the elements of dependent co-arising have the potential to become path factors. Attention, in name and form, can become appropriate attention. Fabrication can become the comfortable breathing and directed thought and evaluation of right concentration. So it's all right here. When you get bored or discouraged with the practice, remind yourself that it's because you're not paying careful attention. You're letting your expectations get in the way, or your moods get in the way. Something is getting in the way, so that you're not really seeing what's going on. This combination of focused attention and consistency means that you pay more and more careful attention, appropriate attention, to the issues of the Four Noble Truths. The truths are not just truths about something. They're ways of looking, categories you can apply to anything going on in the mind. You can watch all the crazy thoughts in the mind and, if you do it from the perspective of the Four Noble Truths, knowledge can arise. Learn to find what in the mind you can rely on as a path factor that will give you the strength you need to withstand the negative factors. The ability not to get discouraged by events comes down to your ability to keep talking to yourself with the right tone of voice, saying the right things to yourself. That's what right view is all about. Remind yourself that no matter how bad things get, or how long the dry stretches seem to last, it's not the end. The possibility for knowledge is always there. This is one of the amazing things about the mind. It's always aware. There's always that potential for knowledge, for understanding. Sometimes it may seem weak, but it's there, and you can encourage it. That's how, when things get bad, you can become your own best counselor, your own best advisor, so that when things crash, not everything gets demolished. Your determination not to keep on suffering, that'll see you through. Ajahn Mun talked about this in his last major sermon. The one thing you hold on to all the way through the path, he said, is the determination not to come back and be the laughingstock of the defilements ever again, not having to suffer ever again. The Buddha calls this taking yourself as your governing principle, reminding yourself that you're suffering and that deep down inside you want to find a way out. So discard your unnecessary baggage and hold on to the basics: consistency, discipline, appropriate attention, for those are the things that'll see you through. Bathed in the breath. When there's a Dhamma talk, you don't have to listen. The important thing is to stay with your breath. When the breath comes in, you know it's coming in. When it goes out, you know it's going out. Try to make that experience of the breath fill your awareness as much as possible. The Dhamma talk here is a fence to keep you corralled with the breath. When the mind wanders off, here's the sound of the Dhamma to remind you to go back to the breath. But when you're with the breath, you don't need reminding. You do your own reminding. That's what the mindfulness does in the meditation. Each time you breathe in, each time you breathe out, remind yourself to stay with the breath. Make just a little mental note. This is where you want to stay. This is where you want to stay. And try not to think of yourself as inhabiting one part of the body watching the breath in another part of the body. Think of the breath as all around you. It's coming in and out the front, coming in and out the back, down from the top, all the way out to your fingers, all the way out to your toes. There's a subtle breath energy coming in and out of the body all the time. If you're in one part of the body watching the breath in the other part, you're probably blocking the breath energy to make space for that sense of you in the part of the body that's watching. So think of yourself as totally surrounded by the breath, bathed in the breath, and then survey the whole body to see where there are still sections of the body that are tense or tight that are preventing the breath from coming in and going out. Allow them to loosen up. This way you allow for the fullness of the breath to come in, go out. Each time there's an in-breath, each time there's an out-breath. Actually, the fullness doesn't go in and out. There's just a quality of fullness that's bathed by the breath coming in, bathed by the breath going out. It's not squeezed out by the breath. It's not forced out by the breath. Each nerve in the body is allowed to relax and have a sense of fullness right here, right now. Simply try to maintain that sense of fullness by the way you breathe. Your focus is on the breath, but you can't help but notice the fullness. If you can't get that sense of fullness going throughout the whole body, find at least some part of the body that doesn't feel squeezed out, that feels open and expansive, and then see if you can copy that same feeling tone in other parts of the body. Notice the other different parts of the body where it feels open like that and allow them to connect. At first, nothing much will happen from that sense of connection, but allow it to stay open, stay open. Each time you breathe in, each time you breathe out, maintain that sense of openness, and the sense of connection will get stronger. This is why the ability to stay with these sensations is so important, for your staying with them is what allows them to grow. If you move off to someplace else, if you're thinking of something else, there will have to be a tensing up in the body to allow that thought to happen. Whatever sense of fullness might have developed, say, in your arms or your legs, in different parts of the body, down your back, doesn't have a chance to develop. It gets squeezed off because you're not paying attention to it anymore. This is why the Buddha talks about concentration as mahagatam shitam, an enlarged awareness. If your awareness is limited just to one little spot, everything else gets squeezed out, everything else gets blotted out. And what is that if not ignorance? You're trying to make your awareness 360 degrees, all around in all directions, because the habit of the mind is to focus its awareness in one spot here, then one spot there, moving around, but there's always the one spot, one spot, one spot. It opens up a little bit and then squeezes off again, opens up a little bit, squeezes off again, and nothing has a chance to grow. But if you allow things to open up throughout the whole body, you realize that if you think about anything at all, you destroy that openness. So you've got to be very, very careful, very, very still to allow this open fullness to develop. So these qualities of consistency, care, and heedfulness are important in allowing this state of concentration to develop. Without them, nothing much seems to happen. You have a little bit of concentration, then you step on it, a little bit of concentration, then you squeeze it off as you go looking at something else, thinking about something else. And so, whatever little bits and pieces of concentration you do have don't seem very remarkable. They don't get a chance to be remarkable. Concentration takes time. And our society's pretty extraordinary in fostering the expectation that things should happen quickly. If anything's going to be good, it has to happen quickly. It has to be instant. And so, by and large, we've lost the ability to stay with things as they develop slowly. We've lost the ability to keep chipping away at a large task that's going to take time and can't be speeded up. When the Buddha gives images for practicing concentration, he often relates them to skills. Skills take time, and he was teaching people who had taken the time to master many useful skills. In Thailand, they still sharpen knives against stones, and it's a skill you have to learn, how not to ruin the knife as you're sharpening it. If you get impatient and try to speed things up, you'll ruin the sharpness, the straightness of the blade. So you have to be very still. The mind has to be still, and you have to maintain just the right amount of pressure constantly as you sharpen the blade. At first, it may seem like nothing is happening, but over time, the blade does get sharper and sharper. The consistency of your pressure is what guarantees that the blade won't get worn in one particular spot. Too sharp in one spot and not sharp enough in another. Too sharp in the sense that the blade is no longer straight. You've worn it down too much in one spot. There are a lot of things you have to watch out for, simply in the act of sharpening a blade. But if you have that skill in your repertoire, then when the time comes to meditate, it's easier to relate to what you're doing. That same kind of consistency, that same evenness of pressure, the continual mindfulness and alertness that are needed to maintain the proper pressure. Another skill sometimes used as an analogy is that of a hunter. A hunter has to be very quiet so as not to scare the animals off, and at the same time very alert so as not to miss when a particular animal comes by. In the same way, we as meditators have to be careful not to slip off in either direction, into too much stillness or too much mental activity. You have to find the proper balance. I was once talking to an anthropologist who said that of all the skills in primitive societies that anthropologists try to learn, the hardest is hunting. It requires the strongest concentration, the most sensitivity. So here we're not hunting animals, but we're hunting concentration, which is even more subtle and requires even more stillness and alertness. Sometimes we in the West think that we come to the Dhamma with an advantage. We've got so much education, we're so well read. But we have a major disadvantage in that we lack the patience and consistency that come with mastering a skill. So keep that in mind as you're meditating. When you find yourself getting impatient for results, you have to be watchful and consistent. You need that sense of being bathed by the breath, being open to the breathing sensations in all parts of the body, down to every little pore of your skin. Then you learn the sensitivity that's required, the consistency that's required to maintain that. That way, the sense of fullness can grow and grow and grow until it becomes really gratifying, really satisfying to give your concentration the kind of strength, the sense of refreshment, the sense of nourishment it needs in order to keep going. A John Fuang once said that without this sense of fullness, refreshment, or rapture, your meditation gets dry. You need this lubricant to keep things smooth and running. The sense of well-being and refreshment, the immediate visceral pleasure of being in a concentrated state. At the same time, it heals all our mental wounds. Any sense of tiredness, of being stressed out, mistreated, abused. It's like medicine for these mental wounds. Now, medicine often takes time to work, especially soothing and reconstituting medicine. Think of the creams you put on chapped skin. The skin isn't immediately cured when you first rub on the cream. It takes time. The skin has to be exposed to the cream for long periods of time to allow the cream to do its work. The same with concentration. It's a treatment that takes time. Your nervous system needs to be exposed to the sense of fullness for a long period of time, giving it a chance to breathe in, breath out all around so that the mindfulness and the breath together can do their healing work. So, don't get impatient. Don't feel that nothing is happening. A lot of things that are very important require time, and they do their work subtly. If you give them the time they need, you find that you're more than repaid. After all, you could be sitting for the whole hour, planning next week, planning next month, planning next year. What will you have at the end of the hour? A lot of plans. And part of you may feel satisfied that you've provided for the future. But when you reflect on how many of your past plans have actually borne results, you'll realize the odds against your new plans ever amounting to much. What would you have to show for your hour then? Nothing very certain. Maybe nothing but mouse droppings and straw. But if you give the breath an hour to do its healing work, totally opening up the body to allow the breath to bathe every nerve out to every pore, you know that you'll come out at the end of the hour with a body and mind in much better shape. The body will be soothed, the mind bright and alert, and you don't need to stop being bathed in the breath when the hour is up. You can keep it going in all your activities. That way, even though you may not be armed with a whole set of plans for facing the future, at least you're in a position where you don't need that kind of armor. You've got the armor of a healthy body and mind. You've got an invisible armor, the force field of this all-encompassing breath, continually streaming out from your center to every pore, protecting you on all sides. That's something you feel in every cell of your body, something you know for sure, for you can sense it all around you, right here, right now. And you know that whatever the future brings, you're prepared, you can handle it. This sense of fullness, brightness, alertness, that's all you'll need to keep the mind capable, healthy, and strong.